All right, here we are, hour number 2. Chris Brown, Steve Tasker with you on a Friday, and you know what that means. It means now is the time to be joined by senior producer from NFL Films, co-host of the ESPN NFL Matchup Show. It is one Greg Cosell joining us. How are we doing, Greg?
How are you guys doing? Getting ready for a little snow, huh?
Oh, yeah, we're telling everybody coming to the game they better put a shovel in the trunk of their car if they want to get out of here afterwards. They may need it.
Yeah, well, you guys deal with that. You know, I live obviously outside of Philadelphia, and I'm not a big snow fan, never was. To me, 3 inches is a lot of snow. I guess I wouldn't go over well in Buffalo, huh?
Did you hear how Greg said that? Well, you guys deal with that. Did you hear that? Yeah. Did you hear the disdain for the snow? Oh, my gosh.
It's the unwillingness to put your arms around it and embrace it is what is the troubling part.
I'm very aware of my unwillingness to do that, Steve. Yes. I have very good self-awareness about that.
All right. Well, let's begin here, Greg, because there has been a lot of talk about this week. People are wondering if Tua and this offense has turned into a pumpkin. The last 2 weeks, San Francisco goes with a much different approach than the Chargers go with the last 2 weeks. Both are equally effective against that Dolphins offense. Tua, it looked supremely crossed up last Sunday night. As I think I might have been more impressed with Brandon Staley's game plan than San Francisco's, because DeMeco Ryans has oodles of talent to work with. Brandon Staley, not so much last week for the Chargers. He goes and plays press man on early downs and goes and backs off on third downs, and then he even switched it in the second half. We can get into the whole plan in a second, but Leslie Frazier's got a lot to pick from on the menu. Obviously, he's going to do what he feels his unit can do best, but there are little bits and pieces he can take from each of these 2 game plans and utilize from time to time on Saturday night, can't he?
Yeah, look, I think that what Brandon Staley did, and I know Brandon Staley a little bit. He is a very aggressive mindset guy, and he's, it took a lot to decide to go that route because, like you said, Brownie, they played press man, and then they also played a good amount of cover 2 where you can press the receivers because you have 2 safeties over the top. And no team had really done that with the amount that the Chargers did. That was really their game plan. And he pretty much said that, hey, if you can't disrupt Tua because their offense is built on quick rhythm, quick timing throws, particularly in normal down and distance situations, if you can't get to Tua, then who else do you have to disrupt? The receivers. It's one or the other, and you're not going to disrupt Tua, so let's disrupt the receivers. And he did it. He was only burned 1 time on the 60-yard touchdown when Mike Davis fell down. The other thing that was really interesting is they play boundary corner and field corner in Los Angeles, the Chargers, and Mike Davis is the boundary corner. There were snaps, guys, in that game where they literally had Davis play 0 man on Hill, and they would bring the boundary safety into the middle of the field to close down windows. So he took a super aggressive approach. I'm not a big blueprint guy. I think you nailed it, Brownie, when you said other teams might take bits and pieces, because I just don't think, I don't think the Bills would echo that exact approach. That's not the way they play. And I think the other factor we do have to keep in mind, and it might not play out tomorrow night because weather will obviously be a factor, but assuming a normal fast track, Mike McDaniel, who I know as well, he's not an idiot. They're going to have some adjustments as well. It's always, that's what the game is. One team does something and then it works, and then the other side evolves and adjusts, and you'll see that over time. Obviously, Bills fans don't care what the Dolphins do in 3 weeks. They care about tomorrow night.
Right. And what we've seen a couple of people say that one of the things the Dolphins have done well and depend on is Tua's ability to throw the ball between the numbers.
Correct.
And the Niners were able to clog those lanes up by saying, if you're going to beat us, you're going to do it 10 yards down the field outside the numbers. And Tua struggled to do that. But there seems another element, particularly in the Charger game and also in the San Francisco game, where Tua doesn't know where to go with the football.
Correct.
So, how much of each of those is important?
Couple of points here. The last one first. Tua is extremely rhythmic, Steve, and his whole game is built on he hits his back foot, he knows where to go, he's decisive, he turns it loose. If he hits that back foot, and something shows that tells him I can't be decisive. Hey, I can't throw it or I want to. He's not the same quarterback. He's not really a late in the down, as we say, pocket quarterback. He needs to play rhythmically. And nor does he have a big arm. So he can't really sit on his back foot and wait for things to happen and then drive the ball at the intermediate levels. That's not his game. So now getting to another point you made, the Niners, look, I think Fred Warner's the best linebacker in football. He's also 6'3". And Fred Warner is phenomenal at playing between the numbers and between the hashes in pass coverage. So you're dealing with and Greenlaw. Look, they have two outstanding nickel linebackers. I think that the Bills have two really good nickel linebackers as well. But Warner is a different animal than Edmonds. Warner has almost more corner type skills than Edmonds. Warner can do those kinds of things. I don't think Edmonds is quite that kind of player. So the Niners had talent, as Brownie, you said, the Niners have really good talent. So they could almost play somewhat normal, whereas the Chargers kind of stepped out of the normal and did something that really no team had done against the Dolphins.
Maybe just talk to us a little bit, because the Chargers also kind of defeated some of that the missile motion that they used with Tyreek Hill and even with Waddle at times. First, maybe just explain to our listening audience how missile motion might be slightly different from just regular motion and how it helps a fast receiver, and then what the Chargers did to defeat that, and then whether or not you think the Bills can employ some of that.
That's something they probably could employ. So let's just talk about that a little bit. So one of the things we've seen all year long, and it's a really good strategy by the Dolphins, they normally do it with Hill, is they would take Hill from one side of the formation and they run him across. It looks like initially jet motion, but then you go all the way across and literally to the side of Waddle, almost as if they'd have a stack release. Okay, so when you do that, it is difficult to press that. And the stack release also makes it difficult to press. And therefore, Hill is flying off the line of scrimmage because he's running. He's in motion. He's running hard across the formation. So what the Chargers did is they basically switched. Instead of trying to stay with the matchups and have a corner run across with Hill, and he's going to be trailing him, and he's going to be off the ball, and it's going to be difficult to defend him, they would just switch it up. And they would then match it. And it didn't show right away to Tua as a clean throw. And that's just what we were talking about, is that if he can't hit that back foot and make a clean throw, it's more difficult for him. So that's the missile motion that they use. They've had really good success with it. I did a piece on it in the matchup show, probably week 4, week 5, week 6, somewhere earlier in the season, because it's really hard to defend. But they chose to switch, and therefore, early in the down, the first 6-7 steps by Hill and Waddle, they didn't show up as really viable throws, and that's what happens. Tua is he gets caught a little bit, and that's what happened.
So it seems like the key is obviously making Tua uncomfortable, which is basically the game plan for just about every team with the opposing quarterback every week. But do you think the Bills are better equipped to muddy the look, so to speak, knowing they have Poyer and Tre'Davious White back there, two players who know how to disguise as veteran players, two guys they did not have in week 3?
Correct. I mean, that week 3 game was a very odd game for the defense. First of all, the Dolphins only ran 39 plays, but Ingram was playing in that game at corner. I believe both Hamlin and Johnson were the safeties in that game, if memory serves me correct. Is that right, Brownie?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm pretty sure.
Taron Johnson was the only regular in their nickel package.
There you go. So, I mean, this is a different defense right now, and obviously White's back, being White. I mean, he literally matched up to Wilson last week, and he played every snap, so he obviously is ready to go. This will be a totally different defense. And as you said, Brownie, they'll take bits and pieces situationally of what the last two teams did. Look, the Bills' defense is pretty talented. Obviously the Niners are real good, but the Bills' defense has talent. It's not as if they're trying to compensate for poor talent. So the question is, and now you're dealing with the weather as well, because I'm very curious to see Tua, who is, like we said, very rhythmic and does not have a big arm, how that's going to play out in this kind of weather. I mean, this could be a 13-10 game, a 10-7 game where teams have to run the ball, and that's just the nature of the evening.
Right, and we've also seen games where in weather like this that turned into a 44-34 game as well because the defense can't stand up. And I've said this too. Everybody says, well, when the weather's like this happens and this happens. You don't always know that that's the case.
No.
Because the simple fact of the matter is it could snow one day and this field could be as slippery as can be. And the next time you play it in snow, it's not that slippery and teams are able to do a lot more things. Defenses are able to do a lot more things. So it really is a game-by-game take on what the weather's going to do. The one thing that's always constant is the wind, and the wind could be a factor in this. And certainly the temperature and the snow are going to be a problem for ball handling. But that, again, is an unpredictable thing. Turnovers are the unpredictable stat that really has so much to do with the outcome. So when you talk about this, the Dolphins' defense has not gotten many turnovers.
No.
They don't seem to be a team that, although they did look pretty good against the Chargers, their defense doesn't seem to get after the quarterback on a consistent basis, although they have at times. And what's their personality defensively in a game like this, given the weather and all of that stuff?
Well, it's hard to know if they'll make any, true tactical changes, but I would say that there's not a lot of mystery to the way the Dolphins play defense. They play a lot of man coverage and they pressure, and they show a lot of pressure front looks. So that's kind of their defensive profile. Now, the degrees with which they do those things can certainly vary on a week-to-week basis. But as you guys know, over the last 3 years, going back to the 2020 season, for the most part, the Bills have not had a lot of problems attacking their man coverage. Then I think they switched up one game and played a lot of zone, and the Bills didn't have a lot of problems with that either. So the Bills have been pretty good against this defense over the last 3 years. I mean, even in the game week 3, where I believe Josh dropped back over 70 times and the Bills ran 90 plays, they had success moving up and down the field. It wasn't as if they were shut down. So they've been able to throw the ball against this defense, and I know people are out. I think Eric Rowe is out.
Yep.
I think someone else is out. I mean,
his backup Elijah Campbell is also out. So
he's also out. I saw that.
The word is they're going to start the rookie Verone McKinley is going to make just his second start of the season, which was going to be my next question, Greg, because when you have a young, inexperienced safety out there. What have offensive coordinators told you over the years as to how you might be able to take advantage of an inexperienced safety in coverage?
Yeah, and he's been playing basically in their in their dime. But now if he starts, because obviously Holland is a really, really good player, and they use him as their back-end safety, and also when they blitz, he's up at the line of scrimmage. McKinley's an interesting guy. I kind of liked his tape a lot. When I watched him coming out of Oregon. I think he has a playmaking dimension to his game. I think you can get him to be aggressive. He's a very aggressive player. So I think you need to try to create scenarios, Brownie, where he's aggressive. And you can do that, maybe it's double moves. Maybe it's maybe it's a certain number of receivers to one side, but I think you can probably attack him. The question is, how will they use him? Will they use him essentially as a box player? Because when he plays in their dime, he's not really a box player. So, because Holland normally, unless he's going to line up on the line of scrimmage in their pressure looks and blitz, then he's the back end safety and he's really good at it. So McKinley might be forced to play in a way in which he's not really comfortable. I'm really curious about the Bills' passing game. Look, they obviously signed Beasley for a reason. We don't have to interpret that. They signed Beasley for a reason. They brought him back because obviously the passing game has not been over the last number of weeks as consistent as it was earlier in the season. Look, they weren't their first 5 serious punts this week against the Jets.
They were.
First 5.
Yeah. First time that's happened this season.
Yeah, and I thought Josh was a little tentative in that game. I thought in the second half he started to seem a little more comfortable. I thought, the throw that told me he was getting more comfortable was the out route to Davis, which I think may have been the first possession of the third quarter. I can't remember, but that was the ball where I said, okay, now he's feeling a little more comfortable. But this offense hasn't been as aggressive. I think if we're being honest, guys, and that's the only way I know how to do it based on tape study. I think that they probably haven't gotten on a week-to-week basis what they were hoping to get out of Gabriel Davis.
I would say
And
that's accurate to some extent. I was going to ask you about that a little bit because I was wondering what's up with Gabe Davis. How much do you believe it's Davis's failure to get consistent separation, and how much do you believe it's scheme oriented, where maybe they're not drawing up as many one-on-one opportunities for him?
yeah,
Because a lot of times, Greg, I see him as just the clear out guy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
yeah, you know what? I'm always leery, Brownie, and I'm just being honest, and I know you guys will appreciate this. It's always hard for me comfortably. Obviously, I have my opinions, but because I'm not in the meetings and I'm not there with installations,
Right.
I'm always a little uncomfortable about talking about scheme. But to me, there is something to that. Now, hey, I'm sure if Ken Dorsey was sitting here, maybe he'd tell me I'm nuts, okay? And maybe I am. But I think that I would tend to agree with you to some extent. I feel like they could do a better job in terms of getting other receivers involved and open through route concepts and combinations. That's just my take watching the film. Now, again, that's, I do want to qualify that because I don't know how it's taught and I
Yep.
don't know, what they do on the practice field. But I think there is some merit to that based on tape study.
How much do you think Beasley? I mean, first of all, he's back. That's number one. Number two, if he's up and he's active and he plays, how much is that a prompting by the offensive staff to get Josh to go to the check down options more often? Because it seems like this has been something that's been happening over the last several weeks, maybe most notably in week 9 and week 10, where Josh is wanting, maybe a little too much, to push the ball down the field when he has an easy check down for 8 or 10 yards. They've tried for the last 4 weeks to get him to do more of that. It's happened on occasion, but not terribly often. I feel like this is a prompting on the part of the staff. Hey, here's a guy you trust. Check it down to him if you're not going to check it down to anybody else.
And I think that's fair as well, because we know that Beasley is really good at finding voids in coverage, particularly zone. McKenzie theoretically has been the man beater guy, but he obviously had 2 drops last week, and I don't know if that prompted them to go get Beasley, but Beasley is obviously a guy, as we saw in the previous number of years, that Josh Allen is really comfortable throwing the ball to. He knows how to find voids. He knows how to find space, and he's a chain mover. And that's ultimately what you want to do. Because, look, I guess I was, this gets back now to the whole offensive philosophy and approach, which, like I said, I don't say this with great confidence, but I see the tape. I thought they would run the ball more or less. Coming off what they did the week prior against the Patriots with, the pony package, which they only ran 4 or 5 times this week, and James Cook running the ball. They didn't really run the ball this week. And, that struck me as interesting as well. But yeah, I think that, and one thing I will say, and I don't know if they talked to Josh Allen about this. I think there have been times this year, Brownie, more recently, where he's left the pocket too soon. And, I think he can, the thing is, he can make special plays doing that, like the play against New England where he threw the touchdown to Davis. So we all get, excited about those plays, but I think there are times he leaves the pocket too soon.
What about the ability to run the football against this Dolphin team? This is, it may be, like you said, dictated by the weather anyway.
Yeah.
But on a level playing field in a dome stadium, what would the matchup look like without the weather being a factor?
I think the Dolphins, they have multiple fronts because, just like every team does with personnel. And then it would depend on what the Bills' personnel is, whether they're going to play with a fullback or not. Or, if they play 11 personnel, then you're not going to get the 5-2 front that the Dolphins play as their base defense. I'll answer it this way, Steve. I personally believe that the Bills have to try to run the ball more no matter who they play against. Because I just, I think we all, and I'll be the first to admit this, coming off last season, and I'm sure you guys felt the same way with the 2 games that Josh Allen had in the playoffs and the last 2.5 years that he's had, I think we all got caught up in that this guy's Superman and that this guy is the most physically gifted quarterback in the league, which he is, if you look at just raw physical traits, and that, you know what, every week he's just going to be super special because that's who he is. And I think sometimes that can camouflage some concerns you have throughout the rest of your offense because you assume that he's going to make those special plays every single week. And that's unrealistic. So you have to find other ways offensively to move the ball and to win. And, I think they've been struggling to do that on a weekly basis. I think that's a fair statement.
Let's just take a look at some of the young pass rushers here for the Bills before we let you go, Greg.
Yep.
And, absent Von Miller, who's no longer part of the equation, Greg Rousseau has done a nice job the last 2 weeks, had 2 sacks along with the forced fumble. Ed Oliver's flashed. So, too, has A.J. Epinesa the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So maybe just give me your synopsis and what the film has told you about these young pass rushers, knowing once again they're going against a quarterback where they know where he's going to be.
And the ball comes out quick, Brownie.
Right.
So this is more, to me, of a early downs, normal down and distance. Your coverage has to be the deciding factor. If you get them into a good number of third and longs, then the pass rush has to win. Now, Armstead, he's playing, so he's a really good left tackle. I think they've got some other concerns along their offensive line that ideally the Bills can exploit. But it's really going to be more in long yardage situations where Tua can't just take the quick 3-step rhythm throws where he has to kind of drop back and throw the football down the field a little bit more. That's where it's going to have to happen. But Rousseau, I've been pleasantly surprised by Rousseau. I'll be the first to admit when he came out that I wasn't sure if he could be this kind of player. And again, I'm not suggesting he's, the best pass rusher in the league, but I think he's shown in his 2 years in the league that he can be a pretty quality edge pass rusher. He knows how to use his length really well, and I think he'll continue to get better at that.
Great stuff, Greg. Thanks for coming along with us today. Appreciate it. It's good to see you. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys, stay warm and safe, all right?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Come up and visit. Come up, bring a snowshoe. Come on.
Yeah, you know what? I think maybe I'll do that in the spring.
You'll love it.
Spring is May here, just so you know,
there
Greg.
you go.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
We appreciate it.